So earlier I did a session on working with your spouse, and we talked about how my wife and I had worked together in 2020 Development Company for 29 years together, and then also in Container Parts for 17 years together. And it was great because we had two businesses, so she was able to run one, I was able to run the other. I would kind of overview and supervise both businesses, and she would overview and supervise those businesses. Her strengths complemented my weaknesses, and my weaknesses complemented her strengths. No, I said that wrong. My weaknesses were complemented by her strengths, and her weaknesses were complemented by my strengths. So we made a great team. We made a good team working together. Throughout the course of the business, our business grew. We needed to hire people, and it became obvious with my daughter's job. She was working at the time as a physical therapist, receptionist, and she wasn't enjoying it. There was a lot of stress and different things going on. So we hired her, and she worked for us for a number of years. She really became my right-hand person. She became very competent at changing flights and working with visas. And we had one situation where I had spelled wrong one of our consultants' names, got his passport or his ticket on the airlines to the wrong spelling. Of course, that created a major problem internationally when he's traveling. His ticket says one thing and his passport says another. And it took her and Kaylee, who worked for us at the time, it took them both a number of hours on the phone, patiently working through the process to get the ticket changed. And that's not an easy process. I hope you don't have to do it. But patience is one of the things that is key there. And in the book and in the conversations, we talk about the importance of using pauses and putting the situation back into their hands and say, okay, how do you solve this problem? We've got the problem. How do you solve it without placing blame? Anyway, I birdwalk there, which means I kind of go off on a tangent. Working with my daughter was able to keep me in line. And there was a challenge in that sometimes as a daughter, she could say things, but as an employee, she couldn't. Or as an employee, she could say things, but as a daughter, she couldn't. And there was a challenge in crossing that line and knowing exactly where that line was a bit of a challenge. And it created stress from time to time. Luckily, that's where Jennifer, my wife, was able to come in and bridge the gap and kind of put us both together. I'm very strong-willed, as you know, and so was she. So there were times when we butt heads on different ideas and how to do things or processes or whatever. And I micromanage. I like to know what's going on, and nobody likes to be micromanaged. But unfortunately, it's something that, as the person who's ultimately responsible with your name on the bottom line and the one who risks it all and is responsible for everybody. When you have your family working for you, it's tough. It's a tough situation because as the business shifts, as ours did, the business has shifted, and we lost both of our businesses crashed at the same time. The consulting business, we did work with USAID, and in January of 2025, Trump did away with USAID, which did away completely with that business. The chances of getting additional consulting work through USAID was very difficult. The competition for the other agencies increased because there were all of a sudden tens of thousands of people competing for their jobs. The other business, also about the same time, we import stainless steel tanks and we sell them to the food and beverage industry. First of all, it was hit by COVID. And a lot of the brew pubs and the wineries went out of business when their equipment became for sale on the market. Every day I get an email with a bunch of equipment that's out there. So we're working through used equipment that's selling at liquidation and foreclosure prices to keep in the market. And then for new stuff coming in, the Trump tariff of 50% put on the tariff and really stop that business as well. So we had to change, and we probably should have changed a lot earlier in the situation. But we couldn't because they were family, and we couldn't just lay off family as easily as we could somebody else because you felt responsible for them, and you understand what's going on in their lives. You understand what their situation is, and you don't want to throw in any more chaos. So there's a challenge of when do I separate business and individual situation. We finally got to the point with both businesses where my daughter and my son-in-law from the other family, Melissa's husband, Casey, we had to say, okay, we can't continue to pay. Every time we pay you guys, we're taking money out of retirement. That's taking money out of your inheritance. So we had to change things. And that was a tough decision to make. It took more time to make because they were family than we would have if they were not family. But I enjoy working with family. I strongly recommend it. You have to make sure that the borders and the lines are understood and the responsibilities are understood. And you also have to understand that sometimes there's an issue that is an issue, but it's a business issue. It's not a personal issue. Sometimes you have to I don't want to say attack, but correct somebody in business, both coming up and going down on the hierarchy scale. And when you do that, you got to remember they're correcting me because of business, not because of personality. And how do you separate that? And how do you, when you're sitting down at the dinner table, how do you not address those issues? So anyway, my daughter worked for me. She did a great job, and deciding when to let them go was a tough decision. We helped build their skills, and I've always sat down with my employees and said, where do you want to be in 5 and 10 years? That's something we'll talk about in some of the other videos. But with a family, you know where they're going and you know what they're doing. Now, it's easy to take advantage of that. It's easy to take advantage. Oh, I'm going to take the kids here. I'm going to go to the zoo. I'm going to do that, this or that. In our situation, it wasn't a matter of you had to be there from 8 to 5. It wasn't like we were in a factory manufacturing things. We could work at 10 o'clock at night. We could work at 6 o'clock in the morning. And we do as a family. There are times when I could pick up the phone and call man and say, hey, I need a correction on this flight. And she would get it done. And Casey with the container business, sometimes he sends out the mass emails and we say, okay, wait, I would change this and this. And you have to understand it's not we're not attacking you. We're not changing you. We're not aggressively coming after you. But from a business standpoint, we need to address this. And sometimes it's difficult to separate. We did a good job. Hopefully you can do a good job as well. Just remember the charm dance principles, communication, honesty, appropriate quality, risk, and markets, etc. Details, it goes on. And all those principles are applied to a situation when you're working with your family.